And then I saw how powerful psychedelics could be when they were used sacredly and used correctly. And an environment was set up so that people could recover in them and find themselves. And it's really like handing somebody a key. Here you go. If you use this key, you have a chance. We're going to set up the conditions for you. Use the key. And if you were willing to grow, you're going to go somewhere. And that amazed me.
Welcome to the Too Curious MD podcast. I'm Dr. Ali Ahmed.
And I'm Dr. Soraya Rahman.
With the wisdom from holistic, alternative, and these conventional medicine, we are here to challenge the status quo.
We're curious about the connectivity and complexity between diverse fields of knowledge as they relate to consciousness, chronic illness, mental health, resilience, and beyond.
Learning more about the art and science of healing, or listening to stories of extraordinary healing. You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to the Too Curious MD podcast, where we ask those unasked questions in ketamine treatment, psychedelic healing, and integrated medicine. And of course, my favorite, narrative medicine and storytelling and the art of healing through the sciences. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Richard W. He is a Navy veteran who's been in treatment with ketamine-assisted therapy, I would say over a year, and has been really doing the work from day one to even now. And he's going to talk to us about his practices in integration, what worked for him, his ketamine experiences, and things that I feel patients need to hear because it has so much more impact and so much more meaning. So welcome, Richard. Welcome to our podcast. We're so excited to have you and do this podcast today.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here.
So Simi is also here today. Hello, Simi. And I'm sure you're going to help us start this conversation. Let's begin.
Let's begin. Richard, so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much. I do want to say that, in getting to know you, I think today's discussion is going to go a lot of different directions, and I think we're going to be able to tie it all together. And I'm so excited to learn from you. I think our patients learn from each other sometimes. Our experiences, there are lots of different threads that run through our experiences, but it's also some of the most awe-inspiring and interesting work and meaningful work that we're doing. So I really hope that our listeners can really find, maybe answers to the questions that they have in their own life, some of the big answers that we're kind of trying to grasp at, right? And so thank you so much for your time, for your energy. We just love to hear from someone who's going through their healing journey, because each time we do, there's something in it for each of us. I learn every time. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, thank you. So I'll just start you off with a little getting to know you icebreaker. Can you tell us a little bit about your early life? Your life as maybe in the services, or, just kind of the pieces that you might want to share with us that help us to understand who is Richard.
I'll start a little bit before that. I actually grew up here. I moved here when I was 2 years old from Arizona. And we lived near Whitney Avenue Elementary School. We had a red brick house with walnut trees in the front and the back. And then back in the old days, you used to burn your trash, so we had a trash burning area. And I remember going in the back, we'd be barbecuing or something, and all of a sudden these jets would just come flying over, and they turned out to be Blue Angels. Or no, that was McClellan. It was the Thunderbirds. And I was just amazed by that. And that got me interested in aviation. So I have that kind of background from way, way back. And when I got in the Navy, I was lucky enough to be in aviation. So I got to be a jet mechanic. And I worked at Whidbey Island in Washington State, which is a really beautiful place. And we only spent about, out of the 3 years I was there, probably about maybe a month total, because we were always doing workups and getting ready to go. And I had a really good career. I started as an E1, and by the time I left my duty station, I would have stayed, but they didn't have a billet for a second class petty officer. So I had to go and end up in San Diego. I'd gone from an E1 to third class petty officer, and I was so far above what I expected that I could do. I mean, I was really kind of in the wrong crowd when I came into the Navy. So it gave me a lot of perspective, and it taught me leadership, and I'm very grateful for those days. That was my beginning there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I'm getting that picture of the story of the young boy being inspired by the jets going above and how that must have felt when you first went to the Navy. And tell us what happens next after the Navy. What was life like, and how did we end up, or some of the pathways that led you to this place here today?
I've always had problems with depression, and it kind of cycled. In the Navy, I was so on all the time and kind of like in alert mode all the time. I would work out and stuff, but I didn't really take care of myself mentally that much. Eventually, I got an ultimatum from the Navy: stop drinking or pack your bags. And I decided to take the stop drinking route and introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that really helped me a lot. Many, many awesome adventures. Got to go to Seattle, San Diego, 2 world assemblies, which was just out of this world. It's like 60,000 people in recovery, and they're all just having a blast. We were at the San Diego Convention Center up on the second floor, and we were dancing. There's so many people up there, the floor was actually starting to go like this, and stuff was on the stage was going up and down, and they had to calm us down a little bit. And that really helped me a lot. I met some wonderful people there. While I was in the Navy, my wife left. She had her boy. She was pregnant. She hadn't had Brendan yet. And when that happened, I remember teaching a class on fuel systems. We were about to do a major inspection for airframes. We had to pull all the engines in our squadron. So part of that was teaching everybody about the power plants and the fuel systems. And at the same time, I knew that my ex-wife was flying out of San Diego Airport while I was giving the lecture. And I finished it, but when I walked out, it was like I broke and I couldn't think clearly. I didn't know which side. I would get directions to go work on the starboard or port side of the airplane. And by the time I got out there, I didn't really know which side of the airplane I was. So I told my division officer about what was going on. And then he said, okay, well, we'll get you some help, and had me working in the tool room. So I ran that for a while, and the depression got really bad, and to the point where I tried to commit suicide a couple times. And kind of one time I just came out of it. The other time I knew that I was really going down, and I kind of chickened out and called my sponsor and ended up in the hospital. And the Navy decided that it would be better for me to take an honorable medical discharge than continue. So I was let go honorably, but I was let go. After that, it was kind of like everything was in slow motion. You're going from working on a flight deck where it's extremely choreographed, extremely high tempo, to just slow motion. There's no more of that dance that goes on, and no more strict routine, and no more challenges like that. So I really didn't know what to do with myself when I got out. And through Alcoholics Anonymous, I met another person in the program that worked for Qualcomm, and he's a hardware guy. He'd build the stacks that the trucks they used to track the trucks that would be going on interstate. And he was very knowledgeable about that. And while I was in the Navy, we went from doing the VIDS math forms, which were man hours and supplies and that sort of thing, and there'd be like a whole bunch of like 7 copies or something, to the computer. And that just scared the Jesus out of me. But I had another guy in the squadron who loved computers because you could look at pictures. and play games. And he's like, no, man, you got to check this out. So I started learning about computers through him. And then I kind of self taught after that. And then with my friend who worked at Qualcomm, he was really in hardware and I was really in software. So we kind of back and forth taught each other. So I ran a tech business for a few years. And then I worked for a place called Aces. What we did was we worked for the city of San Diego, like the senior homes. I helped them with a program that was Windows based. We used a DOS based program way back then. And the DOS program, it would call people up. And if they didn't answer the phone, it would flag them. And then the senior center would call them and check up on them. We were implementing it, beta testing it, and then rolling it out and training the people. Well, they did not like change how to use the things. So that's the kind of stuff I was doing. And I was working in a company called Advanced Windows Technology. It wasn't computer Windows. We were actually putting Windows in, taking elements out from it. And it was the most fabulous job. I worked with a carpenter who was a history teacher. And he'd just rather be out putting windows in than teaching history. So it was just really fun to be around and work with. But they didn't put me on the books. And I'm like, okay, I can't. It's just too risky. You could get hurt. So I quit. And I worked for a telephone company for a while. And then they called back and said, hey, we really need you. We'll put you on the books. Come back. And so I did. And about 2 days after that, we were working on an emergency medical doctor's house in Encinitas, California. And it was a big round house. And it was like cursed or something because they had to get a crane to get the sliding glass door windows in. And things kept going wrong. And everybody went to lunch, but this new guy and me. And we're upstairs and he's putting the window and I'm pushing the window up. So on the second story, and he's putting the caulking on it and getting it ready. Well, he got some caulking on his hand and he reached over and grabbed a towel and he went over like that and hit the window. And I fell backwards off the ladder 2 stories and I landed in like this pile of dirt that was going like this. And I landed like that. So all the energy was released through my left knee, my tib fib, and my right foot. They both just kind of exploded. But luckily, there was a doctor sunning herself in the backyard, so help was really close. So we got that. That was a 10-year recovery from that. And it involved a lot of painkillers. I think at one time I was up to 240 milligrams of Oxycontin a day, which is just unheard of. I was like a walking zombie that weighed 300 pounds. It was a mess. And another person in the program, and they helped me find the South Beach diet. And I lost 100 pounds on that diet. And then the next evolution was to start working out at the gym. And I met a trainer named Langford Jackson, who's a master trainer. And he got me so excited about kinesiology and how that all worked that I became a trainer myself, which was, that was pretty cool. And then I moved out here and still the depression would come back. And it was like over time, I would be spending more time depressed than I was out of it. And I tried all kinds of drugs and therapies and nothing worked. Or they'd work for like 3 months and they just stopped. So I remember coming in to Chez Mines the first day and I had no expectations. I was like, okay, the doctor said, try it out. I said, okay, I will. And I'm sitting there in the front waiting area and I see this girl come bouncing in, all chipper, And I'm like, whoa, she's pretty chipper. Maybe this works. I don't know. And
I don't
now
know
I'm pretty chipper. So I guess it worked. So that's kind of me. Yeah.
It's so beautiful to hear the missing pieces of your puzzle, of your story. And there's so much more richness to what I know about you today through what you just shared. And also the impression of your first entry. To me, I'm always very curious about that when patients come in through the doors, like, they can either see it and say, oh, this is weird, or this is, where am I? Or what is this
Yeah, it
about?
was a beautiful vibe. So calm in there and so peaceful. Ooh,
yeah.
Yeah.
that was very nice.
Yeah.
It's not like
A-
the sterile environment that you usually get.
and then you gave us a 3-star review. Do you remember?
Yeah, and it was because I was trying to be honest.
I don't believe this place. And it's something to be determined.
And I haven't written the last one yet because it's so long now. Maybe hopefully I'll cover some of that here. But
So
my God, it's just so much.
I did laugh at that review. And when I saw the review, Cindy, my practice manager, showed it to me. And I said, oh, he's wondering what's going on here. And is this real? Is this for
Right.
real?
It's just real. Is this going to work?
Is
You
this,
know,
to be determined? It was TBD.
I
And then,
love that.
yeah.
I was trying
Well,
to be honest with everybody because I got good vibes
yeah,
and that chipper person coming in and then the ketamine, which was a little bit scary, but I have a background that involves some psychedelics, so I like them,
yeah,
and I believe the mistake that I made with psychedelics is I didn't have a guide. They're sacred and they need to be treated as they're sacred. And in my past history with them, they were something to explore, to change the way I felt. And here it goes so much deeper. You're actually rewriting your past with a perspective that can make it so much better.
Yeah.
And my first ketamine, can I talk about that?
yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay. So the first ketamine experience I had, my mom she had been suffering from dementia for about 10 years. It had gotten really bad, and she was now in the intensive care at Sutter Hospital in Roseville. And, I could look at her. It was like she had this translucent mask on. She was way under there, but she wasn't there anymore. So the way I dealt with that was I sat with her, and she loved Frank Sinatra, so I put Frank Sinatra on every time I came in. My first experience, while this was going on, first K experience. This is in my journal, and I'll read it to you. So the first K experience, my dog Oliver by my side. First, I followed the sounds. Then I had a drifting in and out experience, kind of a dissolution or disorientation. Then I was dancing with my mother, and I wasn't dancing with her physically yet, but I could see these green and white chakras. And we were there shining and kind of dancing with each other. And I went, what a wonderful experience. The experience after that, I was like I'll show you the picture. Here we go. On this big pile of the mechanical, the mechanics of everything in the universe. And I had looked back and I had these giant wings made of flesh on my back. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I saw my mom and I flew up and I grabbed her hand and we were flying and dancing around the universe and in the cosmos. And I wouldn't have believed it unless I'd actually gone through that experience. So I just felt like if you're going to say goodbye to somebody that's already not there anymore, what a way to do it. How does this work? How was I able to do this? So I got really curious. Yeah. So ketamine made me very curious. So I started reading all these books and trying to figure stuff out. That was my fall 2 experiences.
I believe you have a curious nature anyways. And just from your journey of all the types of work that you've done and how you really enter into different careers, different ways of thinking, only by your curiosity. And I really think that curiosity invites that new way, neuroplasticity, self-reflection really gives us so much more insight into being out of the box, stepping out of the
Kinda
box.
have always been out of the box,
Yeah,
and it's not always
yeah,
been a good thing, I think,
that's
because
that's
it
true.
doesn't fit right in the normal societal norms that, you know, people go by. So and I don't think I'm really good at expressing that. I'm getting a lot better, but when I was younger, I wasn't really good at expressing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I want to ask you about some of these books that you've been reading.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, just because, as Alia was saying, your life journey, it feels like you've lived many lifetimes already. And just the different stages. And I got so much of, your heart, kind of just how, there's heartbreak there in your story. There's recovery there. There's community there. I love that image of the floor, just you guys just jumping on dancing on
Oh,
the floor.
I must have been at least like 5,000 people at least up there. It
What
was
a what a journey, and how much I really appreciate you saying that, everybody who comes to this ketamine therapy, there's skepticism. It's like, is this ever gonna work? Or, we come to it with having maybe lost hope in recovery because, as you just described, this journey is long and arduous, and how kind of we can step into curiosity and reclaim some of the magic of being human. I mean, of course, there's this kind of heart opening. There's just kind of like this wonderful discovery that you can go into. And I am just curious as to seeing, yeah, who are the people you're reading? What are some of the things that are kind of connecting and making sense right now because you've embarked on this part of the journey?
well, Carl Jung would be the first doctor that really piqued my interest in recovery. There were a lot of people that would talk about his philosophies, and I thought those were very relevant and applicable, you know. But I read his autobiography right after I'd gotten out of the treatment center while I was in the Navy, and I wasn't able to piece together a lot of it. There was, it's from Venice. There were language issues, and then the time issues, the way that people talked back then. I didn't really put it together until I started reading the book that was the Psychonauts Encyclopedia, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And it starts with Freud, and then the way Freud and Jung worked together, and then they had kind of a disagreement. Freud was kind of like everything is sex, and Jung was, well, it's spiritual. And so they both went up in their little camps, kind of like AA meetings. If you don't agree with it, start your own, get a pot, got a pot and go. And that's kind of the way psychiatry they've worked together, then they've gone out on different avenues. And then you have like Kant, and you have behavioralists,
Mhm.
you have cognitivists, you have spiritualists. And in a way, they all get, you know, the problem is it's kind of like church, they're all talking about God. Any church, anywhere in the world, if you look at the progression, it's the same. But you have an interpretation where people say, if you don't sign our version, you're going to go to hell. And I just could not buy that. And I think it's the same thing with psychiatry. It's more like, what is your heart telling you? What is your heart telling you? That's kind of what you need to follow. And then I saw how powerful psychedelics could be when they were used sacredly and used correctly. And an environment was set up so that people could recover in them and find themselves. And it's really like handing somebody a key. Here you go. If you use this key, you have a chance. We're going to set up the conditions for you. Use the key, and if you were willing to grow, you're going to go somewhere. And that just that amazed me. It really did. So that's out of all of them. That's my favorite book. Yeah,
Wow.
uh,
What a great
very well written.
metaphor. You're such a great storyteller. I see these images as you're talking. Yeah, I think you were referring to Way of the Psychonaut, Volume 1 and 2 by Stan Groff. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Drop
that's
is
right.
brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great book.
I still listen to a podcast or podcasts on
Mhm.
YouTube about
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit more now, I guess, from your perspective, as you look back, what did ketamine treatments or even the treatments that you sought with therapy and even transcranial magnetic stimulation, if you want to talk about that, how has that changed your thoughts and feelings? Because I often get asked this question on the intake. Is ketamine going to change me? Is it going to make me crazy? Am I going to, so one patient asked me, is it going to change my personality? And I was going to say in my head, of course it will. But I
Yeah.
instead said, no, I don't think so, but that's a great question. I mean, what
That's a
would
hard
you
one to
say?
answer.
It is a hard one to answer.
Uh,
So, how has ketamine changed you, your thoughts, your feelings, your personality? What has ketamine changed for you? And this the key that you used to get to where you are?
One of my intentions was to rewrite the trauma in my past. Before, I'd spent a year doing EDMR work with my last therapist and trying to go back as far as I could, you know. So I was able to, through my body, release a lot of trauma. But as I did that, more stuff was coming up. And one of the things, I had a really hard time when I was in school because I was educationally handicapped, but I had a pretty good vocabulary. So it's kind of like he's a retard that's smart or something. I don't know. It was really confusing. I'd go to try to read a page and I'd skip half the page and it would happen or I wouldn't get it, you know. And one of the things I did when I was in first grade, I was a Disney kid. You know, the way I viewed the world was you grew up to be the hero, you went and you saved the maiden, then you got married, then you lived happily ever after. That's Disney. That's what they said. So that must be what it is. So I'd make up all these stories in my mind, and that's kind of where my head was at. And when it came to doing the academic part, the mechanical part of it, I couldn't put it together. I had no idea what I was really looking at, and I was really scared. So one time, what I figured out to do is like, okay, what I'm going to do, and I did this was I went up to a kid's paper, then it turned his assignment in, erased his name, and put my name on it, which is a terrible thing to do, but that's what I did. And I ended up in the principal's office. Of course, I got caught. One of my ketamine experiences when I was going, my intention was to go and rewrite the narrative of my past traumas. And all of a sudden, I was standing in that first grade classroom in front of a counter with those papers, the assignments all stacked up, not in a dream. I was there. I looked out the window and I was in Whitney Elementary School looking at the kindergarten playground. And when I looked back, I was looking at those papers. And in front of me, that kid's name, my name came off the paper and the kid's name went back on it and bam, I came back. Makes me tingle and hair raise when I think about it. It was real. I mean, it was absolutely real in my mind. That's what happened. And I realized at that point that not only is it possible to go back and change certain things, I can go back and totally rewrite it, you know? And the important thing is that my intention, which is my motives, you know, what I want to do is pure and true. And that's the most important thing. You know, I'm not if I'm trying to do it to get an agenda out of it, it's not going to work. If I'm going back for a pure reason, a true reason, then there is something in the collective consciousness that will guide me to that when that's the time to do it. It is what it is, you know, with that stuff. But that's what happened. And I'm like, wow, I can really do this. You know, I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. But I know if I go in, I set intentions to get better, they're going to happen. And so it's kind of happened as there'll be times when I have a ketamine experience and synesthesia always happens. And that's when you're seeing through your ears. So what your ears are hearing, you're wearing your mask and you're seeing colors and patterns and shapes. And I'm seeing sometimes it's like caricatures or cartoons, like all these like cards that are people, and I'm going, you know, going through this thing and winding around, kind of stuff like that. And it won't make sense I'll be, okay, well, that was really interesting. And with music, it could be anything. But then within the week after I had that ketamine journey, these coincidences start happening. I start noticing things that connect, synchronicities. I think that's what they're called. And that's amazing. It's like all of a sudden I'll meet somebody that's talking about or can get me to the next spot that I need to be in my recovery. Like, for example, I have to have somebody drive me for the ketamine therapy, right? And my doctor kind of laughed. He goes, "Oh, sorry about that." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, you are, but this is a big problem. How am I going to do this?" And then my next door neighbor goes, "Oh, I don't have any problem. I would love to." Right out of the blue. I just mentioned it. She goes, "Oh, yeah, I'd love to take you." And so she did. And through the majority of all my treatment, she's driven down there and she's an artist. So she'll be working on her art. She draws while I'm doing my therapy. And then we'll go get lunch and go home or something. But stuff like that, those are the kind of synchronicities I'm talking. Yeah. There's
Amazing.
definitely, we say science that you don't understand is magic. Well, it's magical. It's magical.
I love that. I'm getting to sense that your mechanical mind, your ability to understand kind of how things work and putting them together, and that constant curiosity is really helping me, and I think our listeners to really understand this is an unlocking, this is a opening
Exactly.
of our capabilities. Because not all patients have this level of recognition that they have the ability to go in and their intention, you just said about the clear intention. If the intention is clear, then everything will come together. I can trust it. The right thing happens. And that is just so profound because I think not everybody finds their way to that place. And I think it's that combination of your curiosity, your kind of willingness to explore and kind of think outside the box and really kind of question yourself, like, is this true? Is this real? Can I confirm it? How does this work? What do I have to do to optimize this? All right, let me learn some more. Let me do more of the thing. And before you know it, you're cooking with gas. And
And I got a lot more questions than when I started.
I love that. I love that. And just in a year, you've gotten to just, almost kind of flipping the script on your own narrative, going, here's the narrative until this point, and then here's the narrative I get to tell about it and learn from it. And even the trauma I've lived with now is something I can, just what you said about rewriting. That's such a clear way. Like your psyche said, I wish I hadn't done that. Now I understand why, and I've been carrying it for so long. Let me let it down. And what's the best representation of that is in the visual, erase that your name out and put the other boy's name back. And hey presto, your psyche's like, it's like it never happened. The trauma, right? It's like, all right, it's been released.
And I
Yeah.
think I'd like to point out when you first started telling about rewriting your history, this is not about rewriting, but re-envisioning it in that moment.
That's a really good way to say that too. Yes.
I mean, there's so many versions of what you described that could be understood. And I imagine this boy standing there with holding the papers, having two thoughts. One, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write my name on it. And who cares? And the other thought that, hey, I don't need to do this. It's not right. It's not my work, you know. But what we recall later on after the act has been made is that one thought and not the other thought that was, I also had that thought. So that juxtaposition of two different, ways of doing things, the way of the psychonaut, right? You're going back into psychologically, where were you in that moment and learned from, what did you learn coming back, and that you are not all that.
I agree. Yeah. It's kind of like having a new pair of glasses, a new
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah. And
as an
and
adult too.
and I
As an
mean,
adult.
there's an ability here to time travel in some
Uh-huh.
ways. I mean, what you just said is you're standing there and you're looking out the window and you're right there. It's an
Almost like
experience.
that.
So
Yeah.
your entire body, this is not just I'm imagining this or I'm making this as a scene. I'm actually in the scene. I'm actually going through it emotionally and physically. And something in that is so deeply healing that I'm transformed. And my
That was
perspective.
the decision point. I got to
Mm.
re-choose,
You
I
got to
Yeah.
think.
re-choose.
And
And
it's the
what that
butterfly
means.
effect, I guess.
Yeah.
Hopefully
And
it was a better choice.
yeah. And you know, like as a pediatrician, as I'm hearing your story, you know, as a child who was struggling to read and wasn't able to, you know, there's just not a lot of recognition of the challenges of, you know, being smart, as you said, and yet having maybe some academic difficulties, maybe in reading that were not addressed, and how desperate that can feel. You know, like that boy making that decision at that moment did it only because he was pushed that far, and how as an adult we can source that self-compassion towards that
Mm,
boy and be like, "That's all right, buddy. Well,
yeah,
it's okay."
it's okay. You know what? I would have done the same thing when I was your. Oh, I was.
Uh,
Secret self-support.
so
You're a wizard. I love this. This is just fantastic. I can't wait to hear how you're doing it. I wanna see under the hood here and see what the techniques are, what's happening. Yeah.
so let's ask that question, that unasked question that isn't
Okay.
is how do you set an intention? What is your technique to getting to that true and clear intention that is so pure by nature that it will result in what it's going to result? But how did you prepare?
You know, I had a sponsor that was a engineer, and everything he built was always crooked. I couldn't tell, but he would always say it's crooked. You know, and he was extremely intelligent. He was a really smart guy. And he would talk to people after the meetings. He would see the guy with the deer in the headlights look, and he would just talk to him, you know, and be very knowledgeable and all blah, 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 blah. But one of the things he told me was, above all, do no harm. That's a very important principle because when I adopted that, what that means to me is that I need to think about how my decision is going to affect not just me, but the people around me, even the small ones. So when I go to have an intention, that's the kind of way I approach it. Is it going to be beneficial for me and not hurt people that are around or anybody on earth for that matter? So if it's a pure intention and it's put out in the right way with faith, it has a lot of power, I think. Yeah, that would be what I do. Does that help? Is that the right
Do you write? What's your journaling practice, or how do you get these words to kind of make sense
about what?
about these images and pictures and things that you're getting? How do you put them to words to kind of, you know, are you a daily journaler? Do you do morning pages? Do you do
I'm only a
prompts
journalist
or
because I have to be. When it's important, I'll write it down kind of guy that's turning more into I'm going to write it every day kind of guy.
yeah.
But yeah, so I do. But is that about intention still, or
Yeah, I feel like, you know, sometimes when we write, especially by hand, and I've seen that you do your writing by hand, there's such a process, and we talk about this in narrative medicine, where sometimes we are just kind of taking notes. You know, when we're sometimes writing, it's like by hand, it can feel like what's flowing comes from a different place, from a higher place. And that's always a fascinating, you know, kind of place to be. Because, yeah, to go from being a non journaler or I only have to write it down when I want to. And so many of our patients struggle with this, that I love the process of writing. For me, writing has always been kind of like this, you know, it's like,
I've got a little weapon here that I'm about
there
to
you
use?
go.
I haven't started yet.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited for you. I can't wait to hear because that is one of those things. It really gets at what that's about, the spiritual aspects of this process that we have, that we all possess, which is writing and art and creativity and all the ways in which we can express ourselves. And I'm just curious as to what your process has evolved into or how it's evolved. So you are not much of a journaler, and what are you doing now? And how are you, bringing in the artist way and things like that?
This whole thing, the intensity of this process has really blown my socks off. I mean, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before, and it's global. And when I say that, I mean that it affects every cell of my body, every part of me, and it's bigger than that. It affects my neighbors, my community, the world. That's how big it is.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to learn how to listen to my heart, the quiet voice. I always know when it's not because the other one is like, it's really loud. But the quiet voice, it's very subtle. And sometimes I'll have an intention and then I'll change it because the heart is just came up with something else. And I don't always get it right, you know, but I'm trying to learn how to do that. And that's big. I think if somebody was to do that like that, then they could expect something. It's not going to be nothing because this universe cares enough about us and God is within that. I don't know everybody has a different aspect on that, and it changes back and forth. But being truthful to yourself, for myself, is the biggest part. Is okay, this is what my heart's saying. This is what I need to look at. I mean, I could say something else, but do I want to get well? I mean, am I focusing on my recovery from depression? Or am I trying to finagle and manipulate my way out of something in the past? I mean, they're both there. They are. And the one with the ego it never works. It makes bad karma. Makes more karma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you started the podcast really talking a little bit about doing not psychedelics without therapy, without facilitation, or without a guide. And I have to highlight this because this is important. There's a lot of talk in ketamine treatment platforms about the combination of ketamine and psychotherapy. And the combination being so important to some. And the evidence, more recently, there's a paper released on there's no benefit, there's no evidence that therapy with ketamine or psychedelics shows any better effect or better result or better outcome in terms of treatment of depression,
That
anxiety,
really came
trauma.
out?
Yeah.
What?
What would be your opinion here? Because I do this work every single day, and I cannot even
No, you work
imagine.
hard at that. Yes.
I can't imagine people doing this kind of work, the work that you just described, the work that you really, with all the intentionality, without facilitation, not being left alone in the room without, that setting that really allows one to explore those inner places, those inner
You're
conscious.
not left alone in the room.
No, no. But what would be your opinion in terms of doing this with therapy? What has that experience been like for you with the facilitation of the setting versus, again, having no therapist in the room? And that does happen.
I was going to try this to the best of my ability. It was kind of like a Hail Mary pass. So my attitude, I think the attitude is very important. Patient to go in and be willing. That's the key is willingness to try. And there's people that aren't there, unfortunately. There's people that just shut down. It's not going to happen and they won't let it happen. Those people won't get helped. I really don't believe they will. My experience, and I've had a few with different doctors and different psychiatrists, is a lot of doctors, they're highly invested in those dissertations to the point where it kind of forms this myopic environment towards anything new. So they're right, and those are probably the guys that hurt people. I don't know, but I think that's dangerous. And I think that you can set studies are statistical, right? So you can set the numbers up any way you want. And what I'm saying is you can set the study up to fail before it even begins. And that's been done. It was done in ufology. It's been done in medicine. It's been done a lot.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I think I want to paraphrase a little bit here. When we talk about the study, I definitely think that part of this question is about the difference between, when you kind of did mention that doing the psychedelics back in the day when it wasn't done kind of with a therapeutic intent, right?
Oh,
Versus
I
now
want to see
you're doing it.
God, and I want to take enough drugs so I see Him.
Right, right.
They never
That's
work.
and so you're noticing that difference is when it's with that true intention versus the intention of just having fun. And that
Well,
those are
listen,
two different things. Nothing wrong with
right,
it.
and there's something that's much more regimented about it. That's really important. The rituals that we have in traditions are extremely important. Every religion has their traditions and their rituals. And even, like medicine man, you go back to Native Americans, they don't just take the drug, they do a whole thing to prepare themselves. There is timing involved, there's astrological things involved, there's community things involved. It is so encompassing, the things that make up those rituals. And they're community rituals. They're not individual thoughts. They have been living, this is what they do, and this is how it works. And it works. And the same with Christianity, the same with Buddhism, the same with shamanism, all that stuff. But you need to look at, in Christianity, the wafer is Christ's body, the wine is Christ's blood. And that's not a metaphor. That's a spiritual reality. And I'm saying with Christianity because that's the audience that's probably going to look at this the most. I mean, it's the first audience that's going to see it. If you look at Native Americans, if you look at Indians, you look at any society, they're going to have a community that has a shaman or a religion to heal. And the community is trusting that person to do that. And it's taken extremely seriously. And I think that any study that does not include those aspects is falling way short. They're not going to hit it. They're going to miss it by 100 miles. So that's what I think. Anyway.
That's so well put. I totally agree with you. The studies are so devoid of that kind of that context of healing that you're talking about, right? And that's what this I think they showed is that they gave one cohort ketamine and then one cohort ketamine with that extra added psychotherapy, and then you put the numbers together and it's like, oh, it's a wash. Well, yes, it's a wash because both conditions are you know not optimized.
No, they're set up to fail from the
That's
beginning.
kind of yeah, absolutely. And so I totally believe that we're not able to see, like, you have a data set and then we haven't really looked at the individuals in this data set and seeing how different they are, because I think that's what we're learning here as being practitioners of this is it's going to be really hard to prove this by the numbers because everybody is so different. Everybody's healing journey is as individual as they are. It's like a fingerprint. No two are alike. And so how
So you're
are
going to
you
have
going
to
to
really come up with a way to quantify it that works.
yeah. Something of that nature. And I think
Yeah,
that's
that's kind
part
of
of
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Am I getting that?
That's it.
That
We've got to have a way to quantify it. So I'm wondering, as we're looking at this, and we don't have to solve that problem right now, but like, how do you quantify it for yourself? What are you seeing that's changing within you that on that personal level for you? And I think that's what I ask my patients. I'm like, how is your life changing? What has shifted? Because that's the information that's really important here.
I agree. You know, that's what needs to be put into the data sets. And it needs to be followed very closely. And not with just two,
Yeah.
you need a whole group, you need a community. And that would give it a little bit of, I think, it would be more valid that way, maybe. You know, I, this book I love, this one right here.
Oh my goodness.
And
Oh
and
my
I'll tell
God.
you, when I was growing up, my doctor lived 2 houses down from me, Doctor Newberger.
Mhm. You've been
And I
celebrating yourself.
remember when I had strep throat or I was sick, he would come and he would visit, he'd make house calls. He'd see me. And for other stuff, I'd go into his office. But he knew me. He knew I played with his sons. We hung out together. This is a return to that. And
Yeah.
I think we need to, as a society, to do that. That's very, very important. Because what's happened in the last few decades is we don't have doctors anymore. We have technicians. We're like a machine. It's like I'm really good at fixing computers. You're really good at fixing bodies. Machines out, machine. Totally different. It is. You need to know, and that's one of the things I really love about Shemines is you start by getting to know the person and listening and providing a way for that person, kind of like building up the structure around that person that he can use or she can use to recover. Modern medicine doesn't do that anymore. And that's why I think that's why we're getting band-aids instead of solutions. It really is mind, body, soul. And if you don't have those together, you're not going to get the thing done. And we're such a hurry now. We're in such a hurry. We move so fast. I can't keep up.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, whatever you say.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I think you're hitting something really deep here, which is that things are moving so fast right now that we don't have the luxury of the pace at which this current healthcare system is going. We don't have the resources to treat all the people who are suffering in this way. And the quicker that we can get to this transformation, the tools, the interventional tools, and I really look at ketamine as an interventional tool.
Me too.
Right? And
Yeah,
it's just as effective, when we, put any other kind of infusion, intervention, molecule that induces rapid change. And this rapid change, as you're saying, is mind, body, soul. And what we're suffering from is the disconnection of the three.
exactly. I agree with that 100%. We are disconnected from it. We have those receptors in our mind. Our brain comes equipped with ketamine receptors, just like it has DMT receptors. It's not like this is foreign to us. This is a part of us, and it's useful. But we are this magnificent collection of enzymes and chemicals and reactions and different life forms all within us. And one of the things that's really interesting is that Dr. Ali is doing this DNA growth therapy. And that's where to start. That's exactly, I believe that's exactly where to start because what's happened over time is we've gotten all these impurities, our lifestyle, the way we think, the way we do, the poisons, the stuff that we're around all the time has changed us. And it's not healthy, and a start is this model of mind, body, soul, because that's who we are. We're mind, body, and soul. And I'm so grateful that you guys have the vision to do that. That's amazing. And I hope in 5 years they're everywhere. I really do. I don't know what your vision is for shamans, but man, I really, I really hope it grows. It can help a lot of people.
Thank you. And that's why we're having this conversation to really share to their experience, you as a patient, us as healers, and the third space between the two, what heals between us. You heal, we heal with you. You heal, your neighbor heals with you. It's so much bigger and broader than just a prescription pad, uh, than a procedure.
It's like a smile's contagious. This is
Yeah.
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 A smile is contagious.
Yeah.
You
And
can
I'm
feel a
feeling,
certain smile, right?
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I'm feeling that return to joy, a return to empowerment, even that when we align,
Self-empowerment, yeah.
self-empowerment, when we can reclaim ourselves, because we feel so disempowered in this everyday reality because of the way it's structured. And yet we
Yeah.
are so powerful. It's like that, Hanuman, the monkey god, right?
Yeah. And he opens, shuts up, and it says, rum, 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 rum. It's so, yeah, yeah.
We're kind of
Um,
in that moment where we've forgotten, or we've been made to forget, or we've been so steeped in the poison that we have absolutely lost touch with our way back to that we are so
I
powerful.
believe that's probably exactly where we're at right now. But I think we have a young generation. What I've been noticing is our children are getting more attuned and they're more intelligent. I think that's just my opinion, But if you put out good energy, you're going to get that back big time, especially from the children,
Yeah.
you know. And that's the shift that's happening. I think that's happening. And there's an old school, the old guard, that's so afraid of letting go of power and money and change, period, Likes change. But it's inevitable. That's the only constant in the whole universe, change.
Yeah.
And it's happening. I just wish it would happen faster,
Mm.
you know?
Well,
Nice.
yeah, we're in the hard part. We're in the difficult part, but I
Yeah.
really am with you in I think what we're noticing in this new generation is a real return to that knowing yourself, that having that relationship with your true voice and authenticity, and not taking a story that's been made for you, but writing your own story. And I think those are some very important messages that I think we're leaving our audience with today, is the
It's
power.
like putting seeds down.
Yeah.
Seeds.
And you've done just that today, Richard. I'm so excited to have had this
Thank
conversation with
you.
you. Thank you
Feel very
so
honored.
much. Thank you.
And I'm going
Now
to
you can water them and tend them and they'll watch them grow. And
Yeah,
that's exciting.
that's exciting.
and I'm going to conclude here with one thing that I've learned about you today, Richard, is that you have great timing. And your next career, you have great timing in your humor, in your seriousness, in your realism, in your humanism. You have great timing. And your next career, stand-up comedy.
You're a
You're at the
storyteller.
mic.
You're a
You're at the mic.
storyteller.
Okay. That's cool. You know what? Once I get over that fear of that, I'll do it.
There you go.
Drives the bejesus out of me
We'll
thinking
be
about
there. We'll be there. We'll be
it.
talking. We'll be there.
I think, yeah, I really enjoyed this. You're absolutely, you wear it so lightly and so gently. And I think there's such a wisdom in just the way you've delivered your story today. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Too Curious MD podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to ask new questions and explore fresh perspectives. We challenge you to ask us those unasked questions that you're curious about in your medical practice, condition, health, and wellness.
If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody just as curious, and leave us a review. It helps us keep the curiosity alive. Post or comment with a question or curious inquiry that you have and seek to explore or learn with us. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.